You are watching or listening to Purham and Associates. For more information, go to www.rpurham.com. Hey, good day to you all. Welcome to Purham and Associates. I'm your host, Randy Purham. Hey, happy belated Father's Day, or day after Father's Day, to all the dads out there in the world, and hope you all had a very servient life yesterday. uh, but your wife, spouse, children, they took care of you, they fed you well, and didn't have you, take the pans out the oven or cut the grass and all that good stuff. You just actually relaxed. I hope you did that. And post King weekend, congratulations to you all out there. That didn't go out there and get yourselves arrested trying to fight against these idiots. But hey, we're gonna get into that though. We're gonna get into that today. Hey, I got a very special guest and good friend back here with me today. We got Douglas Ernest. He is the author of The Spirit of a True Patriot, the inspiring story of retired Captain Douglas J. Ernest, is a U.S. Army war veteran and entrepreneur. He owns a very successful Corvette dealership in Dallas, Texas. After serving our country on the front line of Operation Desert Storm as a U.S. Army infantryman and graduating from Texas Christian University with a bachelor's degree in finance and real estate, Douglas Ernest knew that he had developed the skill set and temperament necessary to build a thriving business. In between military duties, traveling, and training, he enjoyed the feeling of riding in a two-seater Corvette with the top down on the freeway as he traveled the U.S. serving at different units. He felt that everyone should get this experience from their vehicle, and because of this, he contemplated owning and running a car dealership of his own. After getting the necessary training by working at a car dealership, he would work as a salesman for the dealership, and within a few months, decided that he was ready to take it to the next level. Working 18-hour days, 7 days a week, Douglas Ernest used his savings to begin renting an indoor showroom to house Corvettes and purchased 3 Corvettes using a credit card at 18% interest. It was there and then that Corvette Warehouse was born. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the summer presenting others, Mr. Douglas Ernest. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you today, Randy?
I am doing excellent, sir. Doing excellent. It was a great weekend. I didn't go to jail. I didn't go to jail. Oh, tipped it. It was. I live here. I live here in Austin, Texas, and it was. And I was in a meeting. Friday and Saturday. It was kind of like an all day thing. And so we were getting feeds and I guess you could say up to date recaps of what's going on throughout at the Capitol. And so somebody got arrested at the Capitol because they had to evacuate it on Saturday. I guess he was threatening to kill lawmakers and everything. It's very much similar to what happened up in Minnesota, unfortunately, but they actually carried out these attacks. And so we were all like, sitting there like, man, why we gotta be stuck in this meeting? Why can't we go downtown and because we were like literally like maybe 10 minutes away from there, so it was just like, man. But I was like, you know what, that was actually a good thing that we're here and not down there, because it could be a lot worse. But I wanted to ask you, you're up in Dallas, so you're not too far. You know, about 3.5 hours, depending on what's how I-35 is looking. It could take 3 days. But you're up in Dallas. Did you see or hear about any protesting going on up there?
Yeah, we sure did, Randy, and be happy to tell you about it just from when I got on my news feed and just from watching the local Dallas news. And like you, I feel compelled to go down there. I want my voice to be heard. I want to tell people, hey, you're just defying logic with what your arguments for. If you look at the underlying assumptions of these no Trump kings, no kings protests, it's to protect the worst of the worst. Not only our country has, but the worst that the globe has to offer. You're talking about, stopping ICE from sending people from our country that are convicted murderers, convicted rapists, child predators, human traffickers, just the worst of the worst people. And the left is out trying to protect these people and say that they can't be deported. So the underlying assumption, if we look at that and then you take a look at the past, we did make the right decision, and I felt compelled myself to go interject my opinion because I want my voice to be heard. And I feel like I want to change people's mind and say, this is just ridiculous, the underlying assumption, what you're arguing for. But yes, we did have a protest here starting at City Plaza Hall. We had roughly estimates, according to our news, of 8 to 11,000 people show up, which is a pretty big body of people. And they were raising their national Mexican flags, and they were screaming and yelling, but there was no violence, the good thing. But they were chanting, no Trump, no kings, no Trump, no kings, the call for this movement. And it's a pathetic movement, in my opinion, because it's a call to protect felons. It's a call to protect the worst that society around the globe has to offer. And I'm saddened as a veteran, and like you, we talked before that you just see this in our country. Where's the call for veterans benefits? Yeah. Where's the call to help our fellow sisters and brothers? Where's the call to help our people in this country that have been diminished, take care of these kids in these tougher urban areas that don't have enough money to eat, to go to school. But where's the call for that? Where's the call for that? Why are we protesting something that you would just feel is common sense? Because I don't want these people in my neighborhood, and I know you don't want them in yours. So this is a good thing that we're doing for our country. And I feel like I just want to grab someone and say, sit down, let's have a conversation. Let me tell you what your underlying assumption for your protest is. So thanks, man. It was good. It was a good weekend here. We didn't have any violence. We didn't have any craziness. So we made it through, and I'm hoping that this diminishes and we move on to the next news story.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you're right. I actually made a post about that. Was it Saturday? I want to say. I said all this money these companies are spending. You got George Soros, of course. I'm still trying to figure out how he's walking around. But anyway, all this money for being fused into this movement, this protest across the country. And I said to myself, this is like to the tune of billions of dollars. When you look at the logistical efforts that's put into putting this on, this runs hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion, right? And I said, man. Just imagine if that money went towards all these social justice causes that they're proclaiming to be fighting against or fighting for. It would pay for it. It would have been done. You would have solved your own problems. But I said no. That would be stupid of them to do that, because then they would be out of a job. They wouldn't have anything to bitch about, and so they're going to spend money on dumb things and. And say, oh, it's the government's fault and we're oppressed and everything else. So it's just amazing to me that these companies are putting their necks on the line, thinking that this is a 80-20 rule, a 80-20 issue in their favor, when it's actually an 80-20 issue in opposition to what they're doing. And I want to get your thoughts on that, sir.
Man, a great way to put it, the 80-20. You see that in the news now, and I think Scott Jennings coined that term. I watched him on CNN. I watched him on CNN. I said, that was a great term. He used it. The left pulls out a 20% issue and says, hey, we're going to go fight for this. Only 20% of Americans support this issue, but let's just put everything on the line and fight for this. And that's why the Democratic Party's in shambles. And right now I know that we need both parties. It's not like we're going to be able to have the Republican Party come out and we have a King Trump. It's just such a ridiculous argument. You just read about it and you're like, what? Like you just mentioned, why are we exacerbating our resources on this and the money that could be used for something good for mankind and for our citizens and help the people of this country that actually need it? But instead we're wasting this breath, this oxygen, this money, this energy on these ridiculous things. And I chalk it up, Randy, to the legacy media in the last 3-4 years that they have just allowed President Biden to just have a pass. He wasn't even running the country. Somebody else behind the scenes was it. We don't know who that person is yet. We have a inclination who it might be, but we don't know who is making these decisions. And then we have these just disastrous decisions made for our country that led to the demise of our economy, led to the demise of society, led to global warfare. There's things we haven't seen since World War II going on around the globe. And then we give them a pass. But yet Donald Trump gets to office. He's doing all these good things. He's trying to do something good for our country. I mean, think about it. Make America great again. Who can argue with that? Why would you be scorned for having a hat or having a saying that says we want to make our country good? We want to do something good for our nation. So it's the legacy media that just rolled with it years ago. They don't like the Trump administration. They don't like what he stands for. We've become neo-globalists, if you will, over the last decade or so with the trade and with, taking our country and exporting it to them. And I'm extremely familiar with that subject because my father was a victim of this before he was laid to rest. His job was outfitted to a firm in Hong Kong, and several people in my family from Milwaukee, where we grew up, where all these manufacturing jobs were shipped. And this is part of the globalist society where we are just one flat world. We share open borders. We share our money. We share our wealth. We share our everything, and we share our security. And that doesn't pan well for people if you look at what's going on in Israel. So it is a sad state of affairs. But on the positive note, we did win every branch of government to include House, Senate, and executive. So we're on the right path. The American people see right through it. And even though we have these little missteps, these paradoxes that pull us apart, it still propels us forward as a nation. We celebrated 250 years of the Army, and I hope and pray that the Lord will give us another 250, Randy.
Amen. And on that note, I was just about to bring it up that we celebrated. I say we because you and I were served in the army, and so we celebrated our birthday this weekend. And as I was sitting there, like I said, in the meeting all day Saturday, we actually did an army tribute. We got up there, and one of our chairman for our military partnership coalition committee, she called us up, all the vets, and said, displayed the on the screen there the Army song, and we sung that, and we did an actual nice tribute, for the birthday, right? And I immediately, as soon as I went back to my seat, I sat there and I looked down at my phone, and I saw a notification about the protests, potential evacuation underway at the Capitol. It was at that juncture right there, right? So I said to myself, I'm pissed. I'm literally upset because why is it that these idiots are, protesting on my birthday? Why are they not celebrating my birthday? I was very selfish in the moment. Yes, I will admit. I was very selfish in the moment. I said, they're protesting, and that's what it could be. That's how veterans across America should have taken that, is that you have offended us, the veteran community, the Army community. You offended us by trying to take away from what we had going on this special day to make it about you and some BS ideological thing that you got going on. Instead of saying, let's plan this for the following weekend. Let's make it on the 21st. It's the Army's birthday on the 14th. Let's not take away from that day from them. They don't think about that. If somebody did think along those lines, they didn't care enough to say, I'm not going to participate in that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to disrespect these veterans like that. And so that's why I'm offended by that. It's just crazy to me. And I see that it's going to be a very, very much a red wave come March in primaries and in November of next year because of these kind of antics that they're pulling. Once again, going back to this 80-20 rule. So I want to get your thoughts on that, sir, because it was that was just
And the feeling is mutual, Randy. I felt when I would watch the news feed too, and I try to not be glued to the news because there's so many outlets I want to participate in, and I'm just constantly trying to figure out what's going on because this is my job, this is my hobby, something I enjoy. I like to understand what's going on around my area, my local, my state, my regional, and then I like to understand what's going on around the globe because it's just become something I do for my career now, and I found myself even more so this weekend trying to find out what's going on. And like you, I saw that the number one news story was Israel. Number two was the No Kings protest. And number three was the 250 celebration for the U.S. Army. And that I was saddened at first, and then I was angered, just like you mentioned, because I thought my fellow veterans that are dead, those that have left their blood on the battlefield, that this is their day. Those guys that are on the street corner that just couldn't take it anymore and got addicted to alcohol and drugs or the things that they've seen on the battlefield and in modern warfare.
Exactly.
They just couldn't take it, and they had to find a way to deal with it. And this was a way to celebrate what has happened to these veterans and let everybody know that we appreciate them. And instead we were subjected to these crazy, what we would call ideological, just insane things that are just have no, I keep using that word, underlying assumption, because the underlying assumption is we want to protect felons that have committed heinous crimes in our country. That is the underlying assumption from this entire framework of their protest. Mm-hmm. So it is extremely saddened for our nation to be able to be having to deal with that at the same time we are dealing with and having the celebration of the Army's birthday. So too, I felt the same way. And, I tried my best not to let it get me, but it did. And I felt angered. And like you, I remember seeing several news anchors talk about this is great optics for the next election, like you mentioned, for the primaries, and does it make me feel better? Not really. Doesn't really make me feel any better that we got some good commercials for the political red wave. But I just try to find a way to put it past me because I know that this is just one thing that's out there. It's going to be next week. There's going to be something else, and there's going to be something else, and some crazy leftist politician is going to say something that is just so destructive for our nation that they truly believe. And I got to find a way to let those bullets bounce off me and pay homage to those that have served. And my sacrifices were so small, even though I've served in a couple of war fronts. They're so small because I came back unarmed. I didn't come back with any holes. My fingers, my toes, everything's intact. And several of my family members, several of my friends didn't have the same outcome. So I'm so appreciative to the Lord above that he did put me on this earth, and I need to use this gift that the God gave me and to be able to voice my perspective and let other people know. Amen. And that's what keeps me going, because there's been days when I just say, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not enjoying this anymore. It's so much work. I'm up all the time. I'm up early. I'm up late. And I say, why do I got to do this? But it's the knowing that this gift, I have to use it, and I have to talk to people. I have to let my voice be heard, because if it affects one patriot's outcome and it affects one patriot's voice, it's all worth it in the end.
You're absolutely right, and thank you for saying that, because at the end of the day, no matter how much we will wake up and we're laying in bed and like, shit. Man, I just want to roll over and go back to sleep. I don't want to do anything. We all go through that, but then we say, what is your why? What is your why? It goes back to, what is your why? What is the purpose of you doing what you do? Whether you want to or not, you get up and you say, what? It's not about me today. It's about you all. So I'm gonna get out this bed, and, I'm gonna shower, shave, and all that good stuff, and get at it, because it's not about me. And that's something. It goes back to that American spirit of being free and saying, what, this is something that was bestowed upon me, being in this country, and if I don't continue to fight for it and perpetuate that, then it ends with me at the end of the day, because now my posterity won't get to enjoy those freedoms and liberties and the way of life that I enjoy. So I have to continue to fight until they come of age and they're able to carry on that torch. And that's the thing that I think a lot of Americans forget. And we see it. You open up your front door and you go out into the streets and you see like all this desolation, in a sense. You got the homelessness going on. You got dilapidated buildings around you and everything else, and you just say, where am I? Am I in a third world country or am I in the United States of America? And if I'm in the United States of America, then why are we living like this? This is supposed to be the greatest country on earth, but we look like Somalia in 1993. This is like what's going on here? And I want to get your thoughts on, with that, by it being the 250th birthday of the Army, and we both served over on the front lines there. Iran and Israel are at each other's throats right now. Israel just took out their intel chief early this morning, and they're slowly decapitating Iran. And President Trump last week said, "Hey, Iran, come to the table. Let's make a deal. Otherwise, FAFO." And now Iran is FAFOing what's going on. The results of that. So I say all that to say, I believe that the United States just entered into another proxy war, and I don't. We're both too old now, I guess, to get called up and go back out there. But then again, maybe not, because we're so old and we've been there, done that. They might need our expertise on that battlefield. What say you, sir?
Well, I think we already are participating as patriots and letting our voice be heard and putting this out there, because if it wasn't for messaging like yourself, there wouldn't be people to be able to put this message out and let people know what's really going on in the world. And like you mentioned, getting up in the morning, I did forward these interviews this morning, and they're in different parts of the country on conservative talk radio and on video. And I wake up and go, why am I getting up at 6? I went to bed at 2. I'm up writing late at night, trying to write articles and my op-eds and work on my work for business and so forth. And I'm up late and I get up early and I just have that moment of inspiration like you just mentioned. And my moment this weekend is when they played When the Army Goes Marching Along. I haven't heard that song for about 25 years. I heard that song and it was like someone played my favorite song on the radio or something. Yeah. I used to not enjoy singing that song, tromping along in the woods, and say, I can't wait to get out. And now I'm on the TV set watching it going, yeah. So for me, I had my epiphany this weekend, and I too felt it. But this is our way of doing it, Randy, and you don't know because you're so involved. Every time I talk to you, you're so busy, you got all these things, you're getting pulled every which way. You're traveling, you're working, you're trying to meet your deadlines, you're trying to do, finish up your deliverables, and you don't realize that the good that you're compelling. I watched you before I even started interviewing with you. I would find little snippets of you online, and I'd watch and say, man, that's a cool dude right there. He's out there speaking the message of conservatism, a fellow veteran and so forth. And then when I got to visit with you, I think we think a lot alike. Yeah. And we are doing our part. And, we may not called up because our bones and muscles don't work like they used to, but we're putting out a message. We're letting people know what's really going on, because the legacy media is not going to do it for us. Right. If they have their way, we'd have one big open border and give everything away with the kitchen sink. But, the shifting gears on the Iraq conflict, the Iran-Israel conflict, we were just days or weeks away from them having a ballistic missile that contained uranium, and that's a nuclear warhead. And that's bad for the world. That's not just bad for the U.S., it's not bad for Israel, it's bad for the globe, because that turns into nuclear terrorism. We've never experienced nuclear terrorism yet, because no terroristic states actually have a nuclear weapon yet, or one that's been confirmed. So if they were this close, and we've been understood from our intelligence, it's not a secret. You can look at any news platform that's been put out there that they were this close to getting this weapon. And that's a game changer. That's going to immediately change the game in the Middle East. And what we consider Israel as the dominant force in the Middle East, our strategic alliance partner, it would immediately have shifted the paradigm in that sector of the world to Iran being the dominant partner, because they have a nuclear warhead and they're not scared to use it. Israel has a nuclear warhead. They don't talk about it. They don't use it. They don't portray themselves as having this type of threat. But Iran talks about death to Satan, which is us, death to Israel. We want to destroy the enemy. We want to kill them just because of who they are, their culture, their upbringing, the people that they are. So this was a necessary evil. I'm not for war. If you read the book, if you see me on many of these news stories and these op-eds I put out, thank you. Appreciate you getting a copy. I wouldn't say anti-war, but I don't want people to be involved in war because once you start the war, the inertial forces of warfare are so hard to stop. So I don't want war to break out, and we don't want more conflict. But this was a necessary war that had to be taken to the front, because if it wasn't, we were just so close to having this threat level increase from level 2 to level 10, and a regime that's not scared to use it. The Ayatollah has been in power since 1989. 35 years of tyranny has been committed against these people. Add a decade to his predecessor that was alive for a decade. They have been tyrannizing this entire sector of the world. They have using terrorist cells. They're the ones that funded Hamas. They're the ones that funded Hezbollah. They are the body that provided the armament to commit October 7th. And these people were so close to getting a nuclear weapon. It was a necessary evil that needed to be done by Israel. And the job is not done. They still have 4-way to deal with. They still have other nuclear areas to get. But it was something that we hate to see more war break out in this part of the Middle East. But if there's anything that we need to see done, it's to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons. And one other step is, they were given fair warning by the Trump administration, by the global body, the UN. They've called and called and called for them to end their proliferation of nuclear weapons. They were warned by the Trump administration. They were past their deadline to stop the proliferation of these weapons, and they didn't. They were called on. They were given $6 billion by you and I and our fellow taxpayers to stop. And instead, they continued to move forward and propel forward. And now that call was answered by Israel to take them out. Thank you. Hey, Randy, you there?
Yep,
Randy?
sorry. Yep, gotcha. My bad. Mike was off.
No worries.
No, I was saying that you're absolutely right that with war, because we've been there and done that. We know what it looks like. We know what it feels like, and how it affects your mind and your body, and the devastation that it brings to a country and to children and everything else. You want to have a diplomatic approach to resolving these conflicts, but it may be necessary that we do this. And in your book, you talk about the spirit of a true patriot. I love your book, man. It's a great read, and you're talking about how I'm at the juncture where you were talking about coming after you came back from the Desert Storm, hanging up the uniform, started the dealership up, everything is going great in life. And then I'm gonna fast forward here, and then now you're in the Rio Grande Valley. Talk to us about that. I was laughing at that part.
That's the second Gulf War. We were in chaos. We went to Iraq the first time. We went to the border and we didn't go forward because President George Bush wanted to stop at the 4-day mark because he didn't want more bloodshed. He didn't want soldiers to be killed. And we accomplished our mission, which was to drive the Republican Guard out of Kuwait. We did it. They were retreating, and they were not only retreating, they were being decimated on the highway of death as they returned to Iraq. So we accomplished our mission at that point. But Saddam considered his regime to be the ultimate, and he would not comply with UN sanctions. So then here came World War II. Here came the Gulf War II, and we wound up having another call up. And what I mean by call up, at this time, I had decided I was going to take a break, and I was going to be in the reserves, and I was doing 1 week in a month, and summers and so forth. And I was enjoying myself because I wasn't having to travel around and do a lot of work. And I got a letter at my Corvette warehouse work that said you needed to report to the local Carswell Air Force Base in a couple of days. And I saw this letter and I told myself, I'm not doing that. There's no way. I'm not going to Iraq. I'm not. Oh my God! And that's what you tell yourself because you're in denial of what you got to do. But you did. I was under contract. You got to go. So I went home that night and I talked to the missus and I said, I got to go. And a couple of days later, I'm in training over at Carswell Air Force Base to get ready to go. And they put you in what they call a rotisserie back in those days. And if we were reservists back then, I was a combat arms reservist. I was an armor officer, tanks at that time with previous infantry training. They put me in the rotisserie and they just spin you. And several of my colleagues, Captain Mack, a good friend of mine who also is a Corvette enthusiast, he and I talked. He came out of the room one day and he said, Afghanistan. And I thought, oh my God, Afghanistan, that's worse than Iraq, because it was during, we were trying to, the old Osama bin Laden back then. And my colleagues were going into this room and we're trying to figure out where we're going. And I went into this room and I remember getting a letter that night because I didn't get told that day where I was going. And it told me that I was going to be going to Rio Grande Valley. And I remember seeing this message or this paper and talking to my friend and who I was going to be deployed with. And I thought, I didn't even know where that was. I never heard of that before. I didn't know what in the world was this. I thought I was going to like the Grand Canyon or something, or I just had no idea. Yeah. It took me a while. Back then, we didn't have the internet like we have now where you can just get online and go searching and stuff. So I got out my traditional map and I looked at my map and I couldn't find it. And I never in my wildest dreams would think that it would be the southern U.S.-Mexico border. And I got my map out and I looked at this small little town about an hour outside of McAllen, which is a small city in itself. And there was a quartermaster unit. That was a unit that delivered supplies and water to the armor and to the infantry on the battlefield. And I said, what in the world would I be doing down there? And I went down there for a twofold mission. Number one, to train up these forces that were being deployed to Iraq, because this unit was on orders to go to Iraq within 90 days. And I was also being deployed to go do border enforcement. And by border enforcement, it's not us actually controlling the border. It's us doing intelligence, us reporting back to higher in command what we see at the border. And at this time, the threat was terroristic threats coming across the border. It wasn't so much the cartels bringing human trafficking and drugs. It was, we just had 9/11 happen at this point in my life. And there was this huge push to protect the border, unlike what we had the last 4 years, but there was actually a border protection initiative to be able to stop these terrorist cells from bringing these weapons across. So I went down there and I was just shocked at what I saw. This was a beautiful land. I feel like it was no man's land because it's just open desert, open country, hot, like Iraq and Iran, Iraq and Saudi Arabia, extremely hot, 110, 115 degrees, 90 in the winter. And I wound up getting down there and I actually connected with a couple of people. I met a guy that was the platoon leader that was getting ready to deploy to Iraq, Sergeant Garcia. He was a previous Panama War veteran who was a ranger in the 75th Bat, and I became connected to him, and me and him became good friends. And to be quite forthright with you, he had a lot more knowledge about this unit than I did, and he kind of, even though I was the lieutenant at that time, he took the realms and he kind of led the way, and he had a good connection with these kids. And I say kids, these 18, 19, 20-year-olds that are being deployed to Iraq to go fight. And he ended up taking the lead, and I kind of was the intelligence part of it and the background, the paperwork pusher. I was always around. I was always with the team, but he was always kind of drilling them and getting them ready. And he was a really hard-charging NCO that really worked hard to get the job done. And we knew the stakes were high because these kids were all going to be in Desert Storm 2, Gulf War 2. So I wound up spending about 6 months of my life down there and doing this twofold initiative. And this experience completely changed my life. I mean, I went from, maybe putting my patriotism on the side and wanting to, talk about getting out of the military. I became comfortable with civilian life and I didn't plan on staying in anymore. And then it kind of just changed me. And I was around these kids again that were being deployed, that were scared to death about going to war. And I too was one of those kids a decade prior when I went to Gulf War I, and I felt compelled to be able to help, to be able to give my experiences and be able to tell them, you're going to make it, but you better pay attention to your training. You better do everything they tell you. You better take this seriously because you could end up dead on the battlefield. You could lose a limb. You could end up being gassed with biological agents. So great experience for me. Great way to perceive what I understood at the moment of what patriotism was. And a twofold experience I had was being on the border of Mexico. Sergeant Garcia was a dual citizenship. He had come to our country. His parents, one was born here, one wasn't born there, but he had this type of citizenship where he could go back and forth. And when he became a soldier, he got his final legal status by participating and signing up to be in the Army. So if you want to talk about a patriotic individual, you've never found one like that, a person that comes from the impoverished land of Mexico that gets to stay in our country and become a citizen if they participate in Army warfare, and he then participated in Panama. So it was a great experience for me. He took me to parts of his country where he grew up, about 3 hours into the border, and I saw where he grew up, and he grew up in mud. He grew up in a home that was made of mud, and I sincerely made the house was made of mud. The bricks were constructed of dirt. Yeah. The house had no running water, and I got to see what other parts of the world live like. I had seen it on the other side of the globe in the Middle East, but I didn't never see it in my region. I never saw it in North America, and it was one of the best experiences I ever had. I got to move on with veterans in that area, and it was something that just changed my life, and I'm so thankful I was able to be a part of it.
That's awesome, man. And that translates to that passion that you have. It translates to you supporting some more organizations through the proceeds of the book here. And I want you to talk about those organizations and how other people can support them as well.
As we know, our government doesn't have enough resources to take care of our fellow sisters and brothers, these veterans out there that need your resources to be able to lend that helping hand and bridge that gap when they do need something. And probably my favorite charity is Cowtown Warriors because it's local. I'm friends with those that sit on the board. And this Cowtown Warriors is actually a charity that is one of the best rated veterans charities that gives all the money, 100% of it flows through and goes to veterans. There's no money kept. There's no payment for the CEO. There's no payment for the board members. All the money flows through. And I can honestly look at you in the eye and say, these are some of the best human beings I've ever crossed paths with in my life. They spend 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week working on this charity to help our sisters and brothers that need a hand. They do such as when a veteran is having a tough time and lost his job and can't make that mortgage payment, can't make that car payment, can't keep the electric on, doesn't have food, they buy groceries. They bridge that gap and they really provide a major impact in the DFW area. And what's become important to me is because I'm able to connect with these guys on a regular level. I'm able to connect with these girls on a regular level and see them, regularly. I see these people, once a month, every other month, and meet with them. So for me, that's my, favorite, if you will, charity, because I'm able to see the impact that they make. I'm also a big fan of Homeless Veterans for America and the other groups that connect the veterans that are in need, because it's that saying that you hear from your grandparents as a kid. If you give a horse water, they can get so far, but if you lead the horse to water and they can find a way to get their own water, they can take care of themselves moving forward. So these groups that actually empower veterans to get a job and do good when they get out are something that's real good, because I too was a recipient of some of these groups when I was younger and I was in the military. I was struggling with some of the things I had seen in Desert Storm. I went to the VA and they gave me some prescription pills that got me all buzzed up. And then I actually reached out to veterans groups and I found some other veterans that had been in Vietnam War, and they helped me cope with it, and I was able to do it without the drugs, and maybe put down the bottle and not partake in it as much as I did or would have. So I fully support these. I urge your viewers to check out Cowtown Warriors. There's a link on the Corvette Warehouse website for Cowtown Warriors. They do a great body of work, and if you get to know these guys and gals, they'll connect you with other groups that serve and can help you actually make an impact, that your money is going somewhere to an organization that actually gives it all to veterans and none of it goes in their pocket.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Doug, tell people how they can follow you and support you, sir, and share any final thoughts you have.
All right, if you go to CorvetteWarehouse.com and you click Meet the Owner, there's a bunch of different links to check out the story and to take up subsets of the book, and also a place to buy the book. If you buy the book, all proceeds and royalties will go to these veterans groups. It's chopped up amongst them equally. And I urge you to please take this opportunity to contribute and buy the book and allow your voice to be heard by making an impact and giving to these veterans groups. On a final note, Randy, we talk offline, about some of these things. We see the legacy media and all these crazy news stories that are made to confuse us. And you just got to be a patriot. You got to keep driving forward. I used to be a consumer of CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News 24/7, 10, 15, 20 years ago, before these conservative sites, OAN, Breitbart, such as you, Randy, all these great people and networks that get out to put out the real message and let you know what's really going on, instead of from the perspective of the legacy media that's funded by these leftist groups. So if you can just find a way to get the information that is correct from a funnel of different organizations and get it, you can learn that there's not all bad stuff going on in our country. Our country direction has turned, and we are on a path of greatness. I believe that we are considerably turned the corner, and we made a 180, and we're going the opposite way of where we were going 6 months, a year ago, 2 years ago. So good things are in store. I hope the craziness will not get you like it got us this weekend, where we see like we want to go participate and talk some sense into these people. But good things are on the horizon for our country. Good things have happened. The momentum is on our side, and we got to continue to embrace it, take it, understand it, and take advantage of it while we can, because it's only going to get better from here forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Doug, thank you so much. And hey, great talking with you today. Words of wisdom, you're I would say we're considered elders at this point. These kids that's coming up, and they're coming into the military, watching the 250th on Saturday, and the kids that were getting sworn in to serve. President Trump administered the oath of office and everything to them. It's like, man, I'm literally old enough to be these guys' father. Like
and grandfather.
Yeah, and grandfather. Yeah. It's like man, we're elders now, so it's crazy. It's wow. Well, hey, good Doug. Hey, be safe out there. God bless you, sir. And I'll catch up with you soon.
All right. Take care, Randy. My pleasure today. Good talking to you, buddy. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Take care. Goodbye. Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, Douglas Ernest, his book is great. I kid you not. I'm not just saying that because he's a friend or anything. You gotta pick it up. But I'm working on it right now. It's hilarious. It's an emotional roller coaster driven book. So you find, for those that served in Iraq, Afghanistan, even Desert Storm, you find some of the stories in there that he's telling. It draws you in. Let me put it like that. So it's a great book. So I strongly recommend you guys pick it up. But folks, outside of that, I am, those that follow me on social media and through this show here, I'm tinkering around with trying to lose weight. Okay, I just put it like that. And so I get this. This dietary supplement here called Fix, and you take a droplet, not a droplet, but your pipette here, what we call it in the military. Drop that in your water or your favorite beverage. It doesn't have to be water. You take that first thing in the morning, and you will feel it. It is synergistically working in your body to give you up to 9 hours or so, 8 hours of burning that visceral fat in your body, and you're feeling great in the process. Actually, I've been on it for a week now, and I said I gotta let people know about this. This is some good stuff, actually. And so you can find out more information. You can learn more about it by going to marketplaceglobal.com/RPURHAM, my last name, Purham, Purham, and check it out for yourself. If you like it, you want to give it a try, do so. And if you have any questions, reach out. And with that being said, there's a lot going on, as Douglas and I were just discussing. A lot going on around the world. We're potentially heading into World War III, but not really. I think Iran the Iran-Israel thing, although it's, United States is partaking in a limited capacity in this conflict right now, but the surrounding Middle Eastern countries, they're actually rooting for Israel. They're like, thank you, get rid of these bastards. And it's kind of weird to see that, because you're thinking like, okay, this whole region, the Middle Eastern region, they should be like kind of like the band of brothers. They should be sticking together type of thing. And Israel is like the outlier. But no, it's actually the other way around. They're like, hey, good, we get it. Yeah, they're the troublemakers. So we're trying to have peace. We're trying to make money. We're trying to do things, and they're hindering the process. So yeah, take care of that. And so it is what it is. Now I did see that I want to say it was Pakistan. Pakistan is they're trying to make themselves relevant. You know how you got those, you're doing something and you got some friends that come along and y'all are cool, and then you got that one outsider that's like, oh, I'm jealous, so let me do something to try to distract and take the attention away from them so it can be on me. You got there, here comes Pakistan. So on some, if Israel uses a nuclear weapon on Iran, that they're going to nuke them. And it's like, who are you again? Like, well, why are you in this conversation right now? Like, listen now. And so that's where we at right now, folks. So, in other news, I am excited to report as well that over the weekend, despite how busy it was, I am finally finished with my book project, and I still need your support. GiveSendGo.com. Book project / book project 2025, links down here under my chin. Give Send Go, book project 2025. I need help getting it funded so I can get it out there into your hands. And so help me out, help me help you. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to jump up out of here and get my day going, because I do have some things to take care of, a lot of things to take care of. And yeah, so be safe. God bless you all, and have a fantastic week. I will not be here this weekend, this Friday as well. I might go ahead and carve out. It might be an earlier show, but I would try to be here. We'll make it happen. Because other than that, I have my family reunion this weekend, and I will be seeing Douglas this weekend as well. So we'll finally get to catch up in person and chit chat a little bit and stuff like that. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, be safe. God bless you all, and I will catch you all later. Ciao, ciao. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in today. Please be sure to follow, like, subscribe, and share, and go to rpurham.com for more information. See you all soon. Take care. God bless.